Good evening and welcome to another Sunday night charge up. My name is David Lee. I'm the founder and chief coach of Leeway Mind and Body Mastery. You've heard it be said that a healthy body gives you a healthy mind, but you need a healthy mind in order to make the decision to have a healthy body. That's what we do at Leeway Mind and Body. And it's, of course, what you do in your coaching journey. And what I have entitled tonight's talk, I have called it the power of positive thinking. And so no, I haven't. I've called it Pick Your Battles, biting off more than you can do. The picture or the photograph that accompanied tonight was a photograph of me in front of a statue in New York. I recently returned from a good trip in New York where my book launched, and ahead of me, I have my whiteboard, and that whiteboard had a countdown on it. And I started that countdown 150 days out from the launch of my book, which was May the 21st, and it launched in New York on that day. Great news. It sold out day one in every bookstore in New York, which is fantastic. And in the time that I spent in New York following that, I'm not surprised. The title of my book, as you know, is Your Boss Making You Sick? The 8 E's of Equilibrium to Master Work-Life Balance. And, you know, walking around the streets, once a lot of the formalities were over in the first few days, I just spent the time that I did have, which is around about another 2 weeks in New York, not so much as a tourist, because I didn't do any of the tourist sites. What I did do was I Googled the top steak restaurants in New York, and I had one meal a day, and I spent my days just walking around New York in between the time that it took me for my dinner or my booking to be achieved. Some of the places, you know, I couldn't get in till 8:45 at night. So on one day I walked all day long and I didn't eat dinner till 8:45 of an evening. On the course of walking through, and I was walking between 4 and 6 hours a day, clearly I lost weight because one, I was fasting, and two, I was doing what is called low intensity steady state cardio, which is walking. And because I was fasted, all my body was burning was body fat. I joined a gym for a short period of time, so I did a workout every single day. But on one of those walks, on most of the walks, I was seeing statues and having a look at who this person was and why they were. And, oh, that's who he was. I've heard his quotes. And there was one particular statue, and this fellow was actually behind a guarded fence. I thought, you know, what's going on here? And I walked up and I had a look. And the man in the statue was a man by the name of Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, who was a pastor of sorts. He was out the front of a church in New York. And in there it said, this is Dr. Norman Vincent Peale and all the great things that he'd done and the ways that he'd influenced people's lives. And as I stood there, at first I thought, wow, this is bizarre. By very virtue of the fact that I was in New York, recognizing a dream that I had had probably, 86, 96, 16, nearly 40 years later from when I had first read the book that this man wrote, which was called The Power of Positive Thinking. In 2 years, it'll be 40 years ago since I read that book. And as fortune would have it, or fate would have it, as I will talk about later on tonight, I, at the time, was a mail boy. I was earning $115 a week. I lived in the Blue Mountains of Sydney, and I was getting up in the dark, catching a train in the dark, and getting home in the dark and having a cold dinner that was in the fridge, if I was lucky. Being one of 10 kids, quite often that meal had been eaten by one of my kind brothers. But anyway, I was getting off the train one day, and what I would do is I would sleep on the way down to the train because I was getting up at about 4 o'clock in the morning back then, which was early for me then with my lifestyle as an 18-year-old. And I would sleep on the train on the way down in the morning, and I found this book. One of the cleaners or train guards, whoever it was, woke me up and said, right, you're at Central Terminal, you've got to get off. And I got off, and as I was walking up, there was a book. And the book was called The Power of Positive Thinking. And that evening, I pulled the book out and I started reading it on the way home. And I then started talking to the secretaries that I'd be delivering mail to. And one of the women was also reading a book called The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. I've talked about these books before, but one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up not only was it uncanny that he was the man whose book of The Power of Positive Thinking And one of the things he'd said was that only 5% of the population applied for jobs that were paying $25,000 a year or more. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but it was an American book, and I didn't understand that our dollar was like 50 cents to the American dollar back then in 1986, 87. And so I went out and I bought the Sydney Morning Herald, and I circled all the job ads that were paying $25,000 a year, and I went for the job interviews. And the first one I went for was at a publishing company, and I talked the way through, and I was thinking positively and thinking big as the two books, because I'd read the Magic of Thinking Big. I switched it with one of those secretaries, and I did everything the books were telling me to do. And in the interview, being as enthusiastic as I could be, I promised them what I would do, and I was very optimistic, which is the promise of the book. And I got the job. The publisher said, "Okay, great, you got the job. How old are you?" And I was 19, because I said, "I'm 19. And he said, "Okay, we're going to start you on $19,000 a year." And I said, no, hey, whoa. I mean, I had to get this $25,000 job. It's what the book had told me, and I was thinking positively. And he said, "Well, no, I thought you were 25. The job was actually aimed at somebody 25. And I'm thinking, what 25-year-old is being a mail boy. But, at the time, he clearly thought I was, because it was an entry into an industry. It was a finance company at the time, and you started at the ground up. Anyway, I had said to him, sorry, it wasn't a finance company. I was a mail boy at a finance company. It was a publishing company, and you got in the door that way. Anyway, he'd said to me, "That's that." And I said, "Well, hang on. You said you'd sack me after 3 months if I didn't cut it." He said, "Yes." And I said, "If I've exceeded all your wildest expectations after 3 months, will you put me on the $25,000? He said, "All right, we'd have to write those into your contract." And I said, "Absolutely, no problem." Anyway, I went from that $115 a week, I think it was a bit less than, it was about $4,800 at the time, to earning over $43,000 in that year. Now, great epiphany in speaking with Coach Adam. He was telling me the way the world is at the moment, talking about winter challenges and winter wars and all that sort of thing, and how I might construct my talk to be beneficial to you men. Now, as much as I say to you, that's the first book I ever read, there is a quote by Epictetus which says, "Don't just say you have read books, show that through them you have learned to think better, to be more discriminating and a reflective person." Now, here's the point. I read The Power of Positive Thinking. It was all around optimism. I read The Magic of Thinking Big, and it was about thinking bigger than your station in life. And I believed it, and I acted upon it accordingly. There's another quote that says, "When you meet a man of rare intellect, ask him what books he reads." Now, the idea that someone is intellectual and wise, because I think there's a big difference in that they show what they've done rather than just say what they've done. And when I talk about biting off more than you can do, there's an expression, and I don't know who said it, but we've all heard it, if you aim for the stars, you'll hit the moon. And a classic example of this, now I talk about mind and body, and you need a healthy body to have a healthy mind, and a healthy mind to make the decision to have a healthy body. And yesterday, whether you can see that or not, that was my yesterday's workout. I set myself 2 hours to do this workout. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon in Sydney. And what I did was I wanted to do 5 sets of each of these. So anyone wants this workout, I'll send it to you. It'll take you a good couple of hours. It actually took me 2 hours and 17 minutes, and I didn't finish everything because I added stuff along the way. And so when I say, don't just say you've read books, show that by reading them, you've become a more discriminating, or Epictetus said it, and reflective person. I often reflect on the books that I've read. There is an app called Blinkist. So if you want to say you've read books and not even read them, you can actually go to Blinkist, which gives you pretty much a summary or a synopsis of each chapter of those books. And so you go, okay, great. Now, within the Blinkist for myself, whenever I've read a book, I then sit down and write, what did I get out of that book? As I'm reading the books, I will often highlight the pages that have got quotes that I like, and I will then write quotes down that come out of those books. And I'll carry those quotes around with me, because as much as there is a Heraclitus quote that says, you can never step in the same stream twice, because it's never the same stream and you're never the same man. There are books that I have read, like The Power of Positive Thinking when I was 18 or 19, and the first time I read it, as opposed to the 8th or 9th time I've read it, it always has something different in there for me. Now, I read it recently when I got back from New York because of the coincidence, so to speak, of bumping it or seeing the statue and thinking, wow, I am here because every single thing this man told me to believe, I did believe, but I also did. And I set goals that were bigger than what I believed I could achieve. Now, later on in the story of David Lee, many years later, I had come across a clairvoyant and was asking her questions around my children, because one of the women at school had said this one was very, very accurate. And I have always chosen jobs, coaching being the overarching one, I suppose, that I could be anywhere at any time that I wanted. Many of you run your own businesses for the same reason. I even started my own business because there was a quote that said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And I thought it meant boss, being the boss. As time has gone on, I've since known it to be self-mastery. And self-help books are great if you help yourself to their knowledge and put them into practice. And so one of the reflections that I had recently on the power of positive thinking, and then I read The Magic of Thinking Big as well, because they were at the same time, was that they all promise the idea of optimism. Now, and for aiming further than what you expected of yourself. So when I saw this clairvoyant and she said, "Okay, great, yep, your daughter's getting bullied. What about you? You've got 20 minutes. You've already paid the money." And I said, "Great." She said, "Write down what you think you want to earn." And just before I put my pen to paper, she said, "Be careful what you ask for, because you're going to get it. It's your future, remember." Okay, well, how do you do this? And I doubled the number. I doubled the number that I wrote down on that piece of paper. There was about 5 of them, because she said, "Keep taking notes." And I wrote all these things down. She then said to me, "Keep them somewhere where you can see them regularly." And I did. And I looked at them regularly. And what had happened all these years later, she said, "I'd write 3 books. I'm working on the third one right now." And she had said to me, write it all down and look at it regularly. And I did. I looked at it every single time I opened up my drawers. Still have those notes. What she did, I don't think she predicted my future as much as she got me to believe that there were goals bigger. I earned in the next year what I had written down on that piece of paper through thinking, well, how do I get that? Well, I won't get it working here, but my skills are transferable, and my skills and everyone's skills are transferable. And when I ask people, "What do you want to do with your life?" and they're not happy doing what they do, I said, "What do you want to do when you're a child?" and see how those unique skills to you are transferable into. Now, most people say, "I wanted to be a policeman, a fireman, a teacher, or whatever." Good. Most of those have some application in other areas of life. I had somebody say to me when I was younger, "You're going to be on television one day." Now I am. Not television, but the television of that day was 7, 9, 10, and ABC. But there's 90 million YouTube channels considered TV. Did they predict my future? Did they predict the future? I don't know. But I had to believe that what they said, or I wanted to believe that what they said was possible. And the idea that the clairvoyant got me to write down those goals, she got me to aim bigger than what I was playing at the time. And I really was. I mean, I was doing jobs where I could go to my daughter's, soccer competitions and school plays and sit and have cups of coffee and teas with the other mothers where they talk about this clairvoyant, which is what got me to go along. From that, if anyone wants that workout, as I say, just send it, david@leeway.com.au. From that, and on that note, rather, the idea that we're talking about doing what it is, or biting off more than you can do, but doing what it is you say you will do. And I've talked about this before, the Latin expression, "Fuxi fuxis," which is do what you say you will do. And I say if it gets scheduled, it gets done. But the idea that you do something every day towards that. I have a whiteboard, as I said, with that countdown date. I counted down 150 days, and it's been and gone. And now I'm just getting on with the rest of my life. And when I say trusting fate, trusting providence, that what I've done is good enough. And it is good enough because I made sure it was good enough before I finally shipped it. And on that note, the idea of paralysis by analysis, quite often we sit there and we think to ourselves, right, when this is done, then I'll have that and I'll do this and I'll do that. Just do it. Just get on and take the first step. And so on that, there's a question that I ask people, that my brother used to ask people at every single function he ever went to. And it was his kind of nice way to meet people. But he'd say, what's the best advice you give that you don't take yourself? Now, I noticed in one of the challenges you guys have, one of the requests or one of the suggestions is to get in contact with another fellow in your tribe and coach him, more or less. And what I like about that is that you're spreading the love, if you like. You are part and parcel of meeting people, is caring about them. I know people say, I find it difficult making friends. Okay, well, you don't necessarily find it difficult doing something that you're not even doing. So you can't, if I don't leave this house, I'm not going to meet anybody. So that's as many people as I'm going to meet, is as much effort as I put into it. And so obviously going outside and then coaching one of your colleagues or sitting down and asking them how they're going, it's going to get you to ask them questions that are going to stretch them. They're going to be inquisitive questions. Dorothy Parker says, the cure for boredom is curiosity. There is no cure for curiosity. And to maintain a curiosity in everything you do, not only in others, but even in yourself, and why you responded that way or reacted, depending on the end result, I guess, think around the questions or the advice you're giving others, and are you doing it yourself? And this is great. I mean, I love what I do because I'm quite often saying to someone, what do you think your homework's going to be? And they'll tell me, and then I'll get on and I'll do their homework, not for them, but for myself as well. So I'm benefiting on all areas. Interestingly, today I had lunch with my partner and I was telling her about tonight's talk. And I was going on with what I was going to say. And she said, oh, you've got to be kind though, because, you've been doing this for a very long time and this is easy for you. And I said, wow, it was kind of like et tu Brutus in the idea that what, you think this as well? And what I often find, and it can be quite annoying, is that, well, I say annoying, I don't be annoyed because I've got to practice not being annoyed, but the harder you work, everything's hard at the start, but the harder you work, the easier it gets. When I say my micro habits were at one stage macro habits. But if I always do what I always did, I'll always get what I always got. And I would just be the same and I'd be bored and I would be boring. When I say in order to be interesting, you have to be interested, it's the same thing. If you're bored, you're generally boring, and you're bored because you're actually not being curious. So I ask you to be curious around the books you're reading, curious around the people you're meeting, and curious in the regard of who you are showing up as, and how, when I say who you're showing up as, how you are behind closed doors. When they say, a gentleman uses a butter knife in his own, when he's on his own, the idea of who are you really when no one's looking. And if you can give us a good account of yourself and say, I'm a good person, there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually a good thing. And it is self-acknowledgement. But when my partner said that, I said, hey, you know what? It actually isn't all that easy. I still battle. Like today, actually, and I made a good point. Today's one of those days, and I have no idea why, but I've been a bit down all day long. Even saying that makes me feel a bit down, funnily enough. And I've tried everything. Cold water, jumping in the ocean, cold water shower again. I've just had that a bit of malay about myself. But rather than, and it's like, it's not exhaustion from yesterday because I had 8 hours sleep. Maybe that's it. I didn't see a sunrise. Maybe that's it as well. But I don't know. But one of the things that got me to think was, what can I do to make myself feel better? And I tried all those sort of things. Now, I did watch the sunset, which is actually giving me a dopamine release. I had a big double shot an hour before, so at 7:30, because caffeine doesn't actually hit you for another hour. When I say hit you, caffeine's not an adrenaline booster. It's an adenosine receptor closer. Adenosine receptors are the things that tell the body that you're tired. So as much as I felt demotivated and a bit sluggish and a bit down in trying to motivate and release dopamine, which is the reward and the motivation hormone, it's It's one of those things you have to keep doing to get them. As I say, eating good foods is what releases feel-good hormones, serotonin. Eating bad foods decreases it. Inactivity decreases the reward and the motivation hormone. So a slowish start to the day. It's very, very cold here in Sydney. Maybe that's it as well. But yeah, I've had to be really focused on being, tougher on myself than I ordinarily would be. So I've worked for companies where they say, hey, you're swanning around here. You've got to make it look like you're stressed. And that's always frustrating to me. It's like, well, I'm not swanning around. I'm walking around confidently because I've done my homework. I know what clients I'm going to see. I know what I've got on for the day, and I got my week planned out. And they say failure to plan is planning to fail, or prior proper planning prevents poor performance. And in the case of saying, okay, what's the challenge? How am I going to do it? What could go wrong? What am I going to do if something does go wrong? Now, I'm doing this push-up challenge at the moment during the course of winter. I do the push-up challenge in June, the 150 Smith family. You've got to walk or run 150 kilometers over the course of June, and then dry July. Now, when they say summer bodies are made in winter, they are certainly not helped if you actually take the time off in winter. Fine, do a bit of bulking if you want to put a bit of muscle on, eat a bit more food, but you're still going to do the homework. And I find it's easier when I commit to something. The idea that you guys have been given a challenge is the challenge. How do you stick to those challenges? How do you get what somebody else has set you for a goal? Now, one of the things I say is, as a coach, I can never give you my goals, your goals rather. They've got to be your own. One of the things that I do think though, and I will often ask people, what prompted you to look me up? When somebody gets into a coaching situation with me, or in the conversation, the initial conversation, I might say, what was going on in your life at the time you decided to reach out to me? And they will tell me, and I'll say, okay, cool. How did you feel at that moment? Right. Now, how do you feel? You will feel. And similarly, any of you guys, you've gone, right, I'm going to HPF. I'm going to join HPF. And my point I'm going to make is, when you see a solution to your problem and you see yourself as the solved man, there is a journey in between. And I say to my clients, I say, you know what, there's a movie, Nanny McPhee, and basically Nanny McPhee says to the kids, when you need me, you won't want me. And when you want me, you won't need me. And my job is to not necessarily teach people what I know, but to remind them what they already know. But the highest responsibility of a coach is that of accountability, holding you accountable to what it is you say that you want, what it is you say your why is, when it is you say you want it by. So I might say to somebody, what do you want? I want this. What do you desire? Good. Is it realistic? Excellent. When do you want it by? What's the end time? Oh, by June the 30th. What are the action steps you need to take? We've got to do this, you've got to do that, got to do that. Okay, what are you going to have to do to make it happen? Take the first step. That's it. Living the dream. What's your first step? Great. Do it now. Right. What's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? What could possibly go wrong? There's another theory, Quink. Knowing what I now know. Knowing what I now know about a person, place, situation, or thing, how would I do it differently? Would I get involved? If the answer is no, how do I get out? Now, I don't know how many years I've been doing this push-up challenge, but the one thing I've learned is do it every day. Don't cram them up. Once I had to do something like 800 push-ups on the one day. Now, I couldn't move my chest for the next 2 days, so then they banked up. So what I've learned is set a timer. That's where you're going to do them. What I've also learned is I do them. Okay, where's that workout I had? So on the very top, it's got push-up challenge push-ups. Each of those silver dots is 20 push-ups. On they went, and I got them done. That's the point. Now, when I talk about what's the best advice you give that you don't take yourself, during the course of the workout I was doing yesterday, my shoulder's been getting a bit niggly. Now, I don't know how many times I have told people that physiotherapists reckon that if you do a dead hang from a bar for 1 minute, 3 times a day, that'll cure 95% of all shoulder problems. And as I'm sitting there with this niggly shoulder yesterday, I thought, hang on a second, I don't do those dead hangs every day that I've been telling everybody from boot camp or strength classes or boxing to do, and they're doing them because I'm asking them, and I'm telling them to show me a photo of you, because that's accountability, doing a dead hang. They show me, and I go, good, you're going to get better. The doing it yesterday, and how many times did I do it? I ended up doing 4 dead hangs. Interestingly, the very first one, I barely made the minute. The second one, I set a timer for a minute rather than a stopwatch. When it went down, I could open my eyes. The third one, I thought, I'll see how long I can go. 1 minute 45. The very fourth one, I'll let it go at a minute. My point was, what seemed so unrealistic at first became easier and easier and easier. Just while I'm on the theme of physiotherapists and healing, anyone with lower back problems, the number one cure or rehab, if you like, for lower back problems is a bird dog. So a bird dog is basically where you get down on your hands and your knees and you put the right arm out and the left leg out. So you're holding that for 2 to 3 seconds and then you alternate. And that's going to fix your back. I told you I've had a back operation if you've heard me speak before. And doing that, I made sure I did it with every single person that I worked with throughout the course of the days and weeks. And that's how I managed to get it done. I found a way to get it done. Here's my point. Now, Ben, tonight, as he was leading me in, told me about how he's done his ankle. And this is a bit of deja vu, because I said, hang on a second, I'm pretty sure. He said, I know you wouldn't have seen it because you're not on the challenge or whatever it was. But I'd seen him in a video before do exactly the same thing while he was filming. Now, I think he's done a little bit more damage than what he has done before that. But one thing I learned again from a physio many, many years ago, and I've been doing it every single day since, if you can stand on one foot, now what I do is I hold, you can't see this, but I'm holding my leg, and I will hold that for 1 minute, and I'll stand on one leg for 1 minute. Then I'll switch, and I'll hold the other stretch, and I'll do that for 1 minute. Now, as I'm doing that, my body's trying to balance, and all those little twitch muscles inside my ankles are stiffening and resolving, so that if I ever do roll my shoulder, my ankle, it's nowhere near as painful. Now, a lot of you blokes have booked into Kosciuszko. The Kosciuszko trip I did a couple of years ago, I had weights in the backpack. As I got off the bus, 2 seconds into the day, we're about to get in there, and I stepped right into a pothole, over went. And everyone who heard the snap has gone, oh, but I think they were more upset that I wasn't going to get to walk up the top of Kosciuszko. I walked on a little bit, rolled it a little bit around, did the whole thing. Didn't feel it for another 3 days. I felt it in my calf, and that's what they call referred pain. So that's what they call prehab. The idea of shut the gate, the horse is bolted. There are so many things you can do that are prehabilitating, as far as so you don't have to. Now, do that every day as a person anyway. Grip strength's a determinant of longevity. Now, I'm going all over the place, but I have this quote here to remind me of it, which is a jack of all trades and master of none. Everyone's heard that expression. And I keep telling you guys that there are quotes that people throw out there that aren't really what the quote is. The true quote, if you've heard that before, is jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than master of one. And so the true quote was saying, hey, yeah, I say to people, I know a little bit about everything, but not a lot about anything. And when I meet somebody who knows a lot about something, I will ask them about that in their field. Now, the only people who seem to have a problem with that are doctors, because doctors, people, I might say to people, what's the most fascinating part about your studies as a doctor? But most people don't tell people they're doctors, because people go, oh, really, I've got this, and they try to get free advice. Anybody out there who's a plumber or a tradesman will know that most of your family and supposed friends expect you to give them mates rates and work like they would. None of them can ever help you back, by the way. They always do these things that you'll never be able to, barter or quid pro quo on the skills exchange, but they'll expect you to do things for them either for free or for mates rates, because, hey, we're friends. It's one of those things. But my point about that is the idea of every single thing I learn, I make sure I teach so that I learn it. Joseph Joubert said to teach is to learn twice. And so as soon as you read your books, don't show that you've read them, show that you've read them by the actions that you take. refine them, and see how you go from there. Now, classic example, my favorite movie of all time, The Matrix, when Neo says to Morpheus, I know Kung Fu. And Morpheus says, show me. They get into the dojo and Morpheus kicks his ass and says, do you think that's air you're breathing? Quite often we think we know things, but we really don't understand what it is we don't know about a thing. And that's where I keep maintaining the idea of always being curious. In the first 45 minutes of the movie Matrix, Neo only has 80 lines. And of those 80 lines, 44 of them are questions. He averages one question a minute. And so the idea of always being curious, the day you think you know it all is the day you die, is what my father said to me when I was about 8 years of age. My father also said, do the simple things well and everything else will take care of itself. Good saying, but the simple things is get out of bed. The simple things to my father were not so simple to average people. Simply pick up a book and read it was one of my father's things. It wasn't that. Now that's simple to me. The idea that I have, and this is where my partner was coming from today, and she was saying, you know, like the David Gogginses of the world. And I said, well, thanks for the assimilation. But the reality of it was I didn't have a naval or an army or a defense force background that forced discipline into me. In any case, I was actually anti-authority and anti-disciplinarian because I didn't like to be told what to do all the time. I like to think for myself. And in one case, I guess I'm a free thinker because I didn't get schooled in the way of having to think at school because, one, I never did my homework and I was outside of the classroom all the time. Now, I'm lucky. I got through because I read and did a lot of other stuff afterwards. I spent a long period of my life cramming. And tonight, for example, I've come home and people across the road are throwing out books, and one of them was on the ancient civilization of Greece. There's a bunch of other books that were nothing, so I grabbed this one out, and as I was reading through it, I thought, wow, I didn't know that. And it's interested me, even though I studied ancient history. Now, when I say studied, my parents chose those subjects for me. So as a result, I had no interest because they chose it for me. Back to the idea of goal setting. It's great that you guys have challenges. It's great that you have the winter wars. They're goals that were given to you. As I say to you, try and flip the script somehow to the degree that you make them your own. Own those challenges and go outside. I'm sure if you came back to your coach and said, I know you told me to actually hook into one of the blokes in the group and ask him, but I actually asked him what he thinks, how he thinks he could help somebody else now that we've discussed that. Take it one step further. Start thinking for yourself, because that's the point of coaching. Coaching's not to make you better and keep you in the cage. Coaching is to say, okay, how can we help you? What is it that you really need? There's a line that Trinity says to Neo when he's just about to meet Morpheus in the Matrix, in the famous red pill, blue pill scene. She says, now remember, you have to tell the truth. He knows more than you think he knows. Now, coaches don't know anything about you, but they know a lot about human nature. And so even your deepest, darkest secrets, which you might be so ashamed of, they're kind of like water off a duck's back to me anyway. And I would suggest your coaches as well, because it's not the point. The point's not to hear your weaknesses and mock you, laugh at you, or make you feel ashamed. The point of coaching is to say, okay, how can I help? How does that make you feel? What are you doing? What is happening? What's your role in that? How complicit are you in the situation you're now finding yourself in? Everybody's quick to point the finger and live in a world of blame. What I'll quite often say to my clients is, who's responsible? And they never just go, me. They say, well, you know, I say, no, who's responsible? Finally, they'll say, I am. I'll say, what are you going to do about it? And they say, I don't know. I say, what if you did know? Well, I could do this. Good. What else could you do? Good. Now, if people really don't get it, then I'll say, what about this? Have you thought about that? Because I've heard it so many times. I don't know how many thousand people, but it all starts off very, very sane in the idea that people are not very, very honest at first. They don't lie, but they're not truly honest with, this is what bugs me. This is what really holds me back. This is why I've never done this. This is why I feel this way. It's always somebody else's fault. And there will be. There will always be somebody. And that's what I say. Some will, some won't. So what? Not everyone's going to like me, and I'm okay with that. Sure, I've been at this self-help business for quite some time, and I needed a lot of help. I mean, you know, it wasn't an easy upbringing for me. And some of the things that I'd been through, people would say, oh, you know, you had a traumatic childhood. Who didn't? We all had trauma in some way or another. And the idea of saying, well, I had trauma, and so that's why I am. Yes, everybody had their own version of trauma. What you may see as traumatic. And I said to one of my clients, wow, people would pay for your problems. She was saying to me, because of you. I said, what? She goes, well, I got a $30,000 bridging loan in between one. And I'm like, wow, you know, nice problem to have. And it's all sorted. And the other day I met her out the front of her draftsman's office, and we trained in the bushes behind her. You know, that was the mobility of saying, no, I'm going to make sure you do. Because one of the things I do is I don't let people dodge their responsibilities. I don't let them get away with whatever. That's the point. And so within all the challenges that you have and all the meetings that you have with your coaches, there is an enormously high level of accountability that they're going to expect of you. Your part is to play your part, because quite often people will, and I've been guilty of this myself. I don't know, again, with the toolbox fallacy, when I have this, then I'll be that. When I have this, then I'll be that. The way I save myself money buying into things these days is I ask myself, okay, I've come to me with a problem and I want to know this. How could I do it? And I'll come up with 20 different ideas. Now, I don't know where those ideas have come from. They've come from a lot of deep thought. They may have been influenced from books I've read, people I've met, conversations I've had, courses I've even done myself that I'm actually now thinking about in the cold light of day. But I have many programs that I've bought into that I can see that I haven't actually even finished them. And it's like, did I know more than that person? Was I getting what I was getting out of it? Quite often I was promised it was something that it wasn't. It didn't deliver on what it was. And so I've kind of just parked it there. But the idea of always thinking, okay, bring that out now. What could I have done there? I bought into a course on lucid dreaming. It wasn't until I finished the course that it's actually really benefited me. Having said that, I spent the entire, maybe that's it as well. Whilst I slept 8 hours last night, I spent the entire time having to plan that I was somewhere to catch a bus at a certain time. And I had to be there. And all night long in my dream, I was all these certain things that I had to do to make sure I could get here. And they're kind of like hurdles that I had to overcome to get to this bus stop at this particular time. And as I did, and I finally got there. So I don't know how long I had this dream, you know, whatever they say about billionth of a second or whatever. I finally got to the bus stop and I'm letting people go before me, an old lady, and I'm helping her. And then the doors closed and the bus took off. I didn't get on the bus and I woke up. So the lucid dreaming had taught me that if you're not happy with the way a dream goes, you can end it at any stage. Similarly, you can actually have a dream based upon prepping for that dream. As I say, ideally, my brother, who passed away over 10 years ago now, he drowned in the typhoon over there, Typhoon Haiti, all those years ago. My greatest mentor, greatest influence, still stings to think that he's not with me now, but I can look at photos of him and read letters that he has read to me and actually go to sleep and meet him in my dreams. And that's probably the greatest thing I got from the lucid dreaming course that I bought into, which is probably why I left it where it was, because that's what I do whenever I want to do that sort of thing. I do the same thing with my father as well. On that note, my partner's father passed away just on Monday of this week. He spent 3 weeks in palliative care, and every single thing that I could possibly do in my power to lighten her load and my partner and give her access to every single thing she needed to do, I did. Now, in my journaling, it's been very apparent to me that because all I'm doing, you know, the line that I wrote about in my journal from Die Hard. I'm feeling pretty unappreciated here. And it's like, well, hang on. Am I doing all this so that I'll be appreciated, or am I doing it to lighten her load? Why have I taken that thinking on? And so I had to actually sit there and really examine, why am I expecting these accolades or gratitudes or platitudes or whatever it is that I want from her in recognition of me being a nice person? Am I being a nice person because of what I wanted? And that's what I have to be introspective and insightful about. If I was externally focused and curiously, 90% of every motivator that we have in life comes from external validation. The 10% is how we agree with the external validation. And if we go, yeah, I am a good person, good, that's 10%. That's a big difference for actually flipping the switch or flipping the perspective on getting 90% from within. And when you can be self-motivated and self-validated and self-acknowledged and self-disciplined, it all comes down to self. And it's not selfishness, it's self-preservation. Big thing I have to say is, I can tell when I say however many people I've coached, I can tell before I ask the question, and I don't ask the question until it's the last resort, have you been journaling? Now, I don't have to ask. I said, what else? Mate, everything's great. And I've been journaling, and I've been meditating, and I've been exercising, I've been doing the cold showers, and I've been eating lean proteins, and I've been moving for an hour. I'm doing everything. I'm living the dream. Out of 10, where 7 is not an option, 9, 10. Brilliant. That person is journaling every day. The one who goes, man, I don't know, I just can't get any clarity. I can't get this. I don't know why that, and they're picking on me, and I think they're going to sack me, and all that sort of thing. Have you been journaling? No. So when you think they're going to sack you, who's they? What evidence do you have? Tell me what's transpired. Well, I don't know. Now, if you'd written that down, does it really? Well, no. Could they be? Possibly. How's right? How much notice? Okay. All the, we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality. As I said, Plato said, thinking is the soul talking with itself, and we learn to think on paper. And I think one of the biggest problems for men, particularly in this country, is the machismo, the alpha. Well, now I'm told it's sigma. Apparently, sigma is bigger than alpha. So the cool kids are saying. I have to look into it because I only heard it today. But the idea that we have to be these big, rough and tumble guys, and yeah, man, real men don't cry. Good, great. Set a standard. Be tough. But the idea that the thinking that journaling is somehow not manly. Okay. A lot of women who wrote phenomenal books wrote it under the pseudonym of a man, and books weren't published by women or written by women or even published because they were written by a woman for many, many years. So women had to adopt a pen name, but men have been writing for centuries. And so whether you write, I feel a bit glum, or I can't work out why today I feel a bit down and a bit sad, blah, 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 who cares? There's nothing wrong with that. The most powerful man in the world at one stage, Marcus Aurelius, wrote Meditations, 12 books that he wrote about his thoughts, experiences, his shortcomings, his views on mortality or immortality, all that sort of business. And he wrote it. And when people say to me, how do you do it? And it's like anything. Epictetus said, if you want to be a writer, write. If you want to journal, journal. If you want to walk, take the first step. The idea that, everyone's got 2 feet. There's one thing I did see in this Greek book that I was reading tonight. There was a riddle or a question that was asked of somebody. And the question was, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 1 in the evening? And the person who answered it, I have to find out. I wasn't thinking to quote it, so I didn't think about it. The answer was man, because we crawl when we're born, we walk on 2 legs during our heyday, as we would all like to think we're in, and we're using a staff so it was 3 rather for the evening. We're using this cane or staff as we get older. Now, ideally, I would like to be walking on 2 in the evening, and that's only going to happen by me walking every single day. use it or lose it, excuse me, applies to physical, mental, spiritual, social, financial, family, business, and romance. I've been saying to people, like once I talk about morning routines and journaling being one of those, and then my first thing I would do, of course, go to the bathroom, have a big glass of water I've actually upgraded again. I'm always changing, and I've upgraded it to Celtic sea salt. The only reason why is that if I look on the packages these days, it's made in, got from Pakistan, produced in China. And there's some things that I've been reading that somewhere along the way, there's other stuff being put in there. So I thought, right, looked into Celtic sea salt, very similar benefits, even more or as beneficial with all the minerals. So now I'm doing the Celtic sea salt rather than the Himalayan rock salt, unless you buy it from a health food store. So doing that, then I have my 3-minute shower. While I'm having that freezing 3-minute shower and I'm smiling at myself in the mirror, because it's funny, I'm also telling myself I love myself 10 times, which is what you're supposed to do. And it'll sound very weird to you at first, but because you love yourself, then, you should, self-love is first love. You can't love anyone till you love yourself. The switch that I flipped on that one today is, well, hang on. If every day I tell myself I love myself 10 times so that I will love myself, what happens if I tell my partner I love her 10 times? Will she love me as much as I love myself? So I tried it on. I'll let you know how that goes. The day's not over. But the point of that is, everything that we are doing for ourselves, see how we can then either teach or impart that on to other people, and see how flexible we can be in our self-care. My partner sent me a text last night, which was quite cool. And she was in the gym and she'd sent me this thing and she's really upset. I bought her some new, apart from the fact that she's upset because her father has passed, I bought her some new running shoes. Now, when I say bought her some new running shoes, I gave her a voucher. So she went in there yesterday. She bought the shoes. That was great. And then she was going to the gym. And she sent me this. Great. I'm at the gym. Plus Fitness, brilliant. Well done. And then she's written, I effed my knee squatting. What can I do? I still want to run. Oh, no. How much are you lifting? Just row and see how you go. So she did. Anyway, here's hours later. She sent me a thing because she stayed at her mother's house last night. And it said something along the lines of, you're a phenomenal wellness coach. And I said, why? And she goes, because she knew what to do and blah, 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 blah. She's never felt healthier. But the thing is, I haven't told her what to do. She's come to the gym with me and said, what are you doing that for? And I've told her. I've never seen her fitter. There's a woman who beat cancer last year and has never been fitter. We've been together 5 years and she's an Amazonian, 4 years rather. Now, to her, the idea that she's gotten fit but as I say, it's even, let's go back to the Matrix. When he says, you take the red pill and you take the blue pill and you wake up in Wonderland and, see where the story ends. He has, even Neo says, I can open the door, you've still got to walk through it. Your coach's job and our job is to go, okay, these are the goals that we've set. They're the action steps. Now we have to do them. What do we have to do to make them happy? To make them happen rather. And in that case, even when Morpheus says to Neo, you have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he expects to wake up. And the idea of every one of you who've joined HPF or have started with a coach, I love it. I mean, I always love what I call the discovery session or strategy session rather with a new client, because when they tell me what they want and, what is it you want? What do you have to do? Who do you want to be to have what you want to have? What's your why? What will your why give you? The whys are the windows to your goals. With a big enough why, man can endure almost anyhow, Friedrich Nietzsche said. But you work out what your whys are. You work out why you want it and what it is and what you have to do to get it and all those sort of things. And then you've got them on paper. One of my clients yesterday was telling me how he laid it all out and he looked at it and then it just dropped. The penny dropped. Now, when I say I look at a client and I say out of 10, where 7 is not an option, because everyone says 7 for mental, physical, spiritual, social, financial, family, business, and romance. How do you rate yourself? Right. How would we get that up to a 9 or a 10? What do you have to do? That's the question. The answers are your answers. They're not my goals. They're your answers. They're your goals. What do you have to do to make it happen? And that's your job. And then the coach's job is to hold you accountable to that. And the idea of it is going, okay, did you do this? Why? What do you think your homework is? What is it going to get you? When are you going to do it? How can I help? Let me know. As I say, I have people sending me photos of stuff they would do. Even the idea of being truthful. And even Morpheus says, remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. He's saying, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Right now I'm having a blank as to which is the good one or which is the bad one. But the idea when I say the bad one being that he stays where he is, that he doesn't change anything, that he just accepts fate. Because even when he says to Neo, do you believe in fate, Neo? And Neo says, why? No, he says, why not? He says, I don't like the idea that I'm not in control of my own life. And so you've joining any coaching program or enrolling in anything that is going to help you. It's like the guy who owns the gym that I take all the outdoor classes for this guy. And one day I said to him, can I have a look at all the, like you reckon you got 1,000 members here. I've met about 400. I mean, over the course of 1 week, there are 150 different people that I get to engage with on the beach. Love it, right? They've all got problems, they've all got goals, they've all got dreams, but I see them doing it, and every day they've been consistent. The ones who've lost the weight, got the muscles, doing all this, who say, oh, thank you, David, they did it. I didn't get out of bed. Sure, they'll get charged $10 if they don't. But I said to the owner, can you give me a list of all the people who are members of the gym that aren't coming along to the classes and they pay that? I'm going to send them an email or I'll call them up. And he goes, no, don't do that. And I said, why not? And he said, a lot of people cancel when we do that. A lot of people join a gym and go, tick, and that's that. Then they cancel if they're reminded you haven't been to the gym, which the point of the gym is to give the person a place to flex their muscles and to do what it is they said they wanted to do. As I don't know whether I've told you guys, but I've worked in a media perspective. I've worked with Anytime Fitness, Fitness First, Plus Fitness, and the average Fitness First has 5,500 members. The average Fitness First member goes 1.1 times per week. Now, those figures, that average, would be put up by the people who go every single day. Now, I can go to any Plus Fitness in Australia, and quite often I'll go to 2 in the one day. I might drive to one and go, someone's on the bench. Go to the next one, no one's on the bench. I can also go to Manly Beach Health Club anytime I like for free because I'm one of the paid staff. Go in there. So to me, I'm one of the ones who'd up the average. So biting off more than you can do. And so I'm going to go to the gym 7 times a week. If you only go 5, you've aimed for the stars and you've hit the moon. The lady who I met with the $30,000 bridging loan, who I met outside the draftsman's office the other day, and we went around behind there as a nice little waterfall and a bush where we were training. And she said to me, I had a bit of an epiphany. And I said, why is that? And she said, I've realized that when I say to myself, I'm not going to have any chocolate or I'm not going to have any snakes, and then I have a snake, so I eat the whole bag, or I have a little chomp, so I eat the whole bag. The other day I had a chomp and 1 snake, and that was it, she said. And I don't have to knock myself out. And I said, what, you might have given yourself a bit of leeway? She said, yes. I said, oh, curious. Now, I looked at one of my goals that I'd written in mental. And even though it had a physical component to it, I had written in my goals, stop mindlessly consuming bullets. My favorite licorice, chocolate-colored licorice treat. And as a remedy for mindlessly consuming bullets, I decided that I would take 3 out at a time and I would look out the window while I daydreamed and ate 3 bullets. And it would take me about 5 minutes to eat the 3 bullets rather than 10 minutes in front of YouTube eating the whole packet mindlessly. Where are they? Did I drop any? No. You just mindlessly consumed the entire bag of Darryl Lee chocolates, which when I put into play the 3 mindfully consumed chocolate bullets, I don't even eat them anymore. I stopped buying them because why? One of my subsequent goals was to eliminate sugar. Now, each of these has to have a deadline on them. And then what I call so there's a pre-mortem. So the idea of post-mortem is after the event. Pre-mortem is, okay, premeditatio malorum, what's the worst thing that could possibly go wrong, and do everything in my power to make sure it doesn't. If at the end of my 12 weeks, 8 weeks, however long I set myself of goals, am I going to go, boom, the pendulum back? Look at Jeff Hugel. I interviewed Jeff Hugel for Men's Fitness magazine. He put 50 kilos on because he'd been chasing the black line every single morning and then quit sport. What was he going to do? He didn't have any other identity besides that. And when I talk about identity beliefs, you can't be your job. You can't be married to a beautiful woman and that's your identity. You have to be, who are you from a mental perspective? What is your mental identity? And what goals do you set around mental acuity? Mental acuity could be that I want to read one book a week. It could be I want to learn another language. Whatever it is, put yourself wholeheartedly into that master mastery, as I call it. Physically, what do you want to do? Great. Set the physical goal. Spiritually, what do I want to do? Every single time I ask people about spirituality, they go, I'm not very religious. No, spirituality is not religion. Christ wasn't a Christian. Muhammad wasn't a Muslim. Buddha wasn't a Buddhist, etc. We wrapped them up in religion, charged for the privilege, and then had wars about it. And now people are, well, where are you from? Are you Muslim? Wow. It's not an identity. It shouldn't identify you in what your spirituality is. It's a part of you. And the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. But each of those parts have to add up to the whole. So that if one falls over, you're not like you've lost your keys. Your identity has to be spread around mental, physical, spiritual, social, financial, family, business, and romance. You may choose not to have a romantic partner. I had a fellow come to me and he wanted relationship coaching. Now, what I find interesting is that with my program, it's holistic. Even if you want me for business coaching, we still got to look at your mental situation, your physical situation. Are you trying to get better at business because it's bad at home or it's good at home? From a romance perspective, this guy needed to work on how he viewed himself. He needed to work on his physicality. He needed to work on all these different things. His finances, he had all this money, but was being a tight ass. He's now, after 4 weeks, gone, you know what? I've worked out, I've really enjoyed these 4 weeks on my own. He's gone from relationship to relationship. He's like grabbing onto the branch before he lets go of that one. You know, it's like, no. I say to people, particularly women, I'm going to introduce you to the most interesting person you're ever going to meet in your life. Who? You. Take the time to get to know you inside and out. And even so, where do you fall? Where do you fail? Why, from a challenge perspective, if I can't win, I won't play? That's not the idea. And when they say the race is long, but in the end, it's only with yourself. Ernest Hemingway said, it's not about being better than your fellow man. It's being better than the man you were yesterday. Now, having said that, I'm in this push-up challenge and I look at it and I think, okay, Alan's up the top. What do I have to do? Now, we're all going to get the same numbers. One thing that Neo says, Morpheus says, the second Neo has taken the pill is time is always against us. And so, gentlemen, it is getting to that time on a Sunday night with 1 minute left to go. I'll put a couple of things that I did have that I want you guys to consider in anything that you are participating in. What did you do well? You may not have won, but what did you do well? What could you have done better? And then the idea of, no, I'll throw that one. It's got nothing to do with anything, but knowing what you now know about yourself, your program, the resources available to you, everything that you have, knowing what you now know, how would you do it better? Doesn't have to be best, good, better, best, just do it better and do something every single day towards that. Little by little, a little becomes a lot. One step you take today is one less step you have to take tomorrow. And what I find interesting is 2 hours, 17-minute workout I did yesterday, no pain. Why? Because I've never stopped. Every single person that comes back, I saw a woman the other day, she's a doctor. And I said, well, where have you been? I haven't seen you for 3 weeks. She said, yesterday was the first time I was able to move after the session I did 3 weeks ago. She was a runner, but she knows that muscles are important. Muscle mass are one of the 3 biggest determinants of longevity. The other ones are how well you sleep and your ability to fast, because it's obviously mopping up dead cancer, bad cells in the body, the longer you fast and go without food. Breakfast is breaking the fast. I have breakfast every day about 2 o'clock, but it doesn't have to be Wheat Bix and Cocoa Pops or whatever it is. Gentlemen, with that, thank you very much again. If anybody wants, so hey, I did tell you my book sold out day 1. in New York. Now I'm promoting the audio book. So clearly I wrote it as a book. I have recorded the audio for that. Anybody listening tonight, anybody who emails me tomorrow. So if you don't listen to this till Tuesday, bad luck. Anyone who emails me tomorrow, david@leeway.com.au, I'll send you the audio version of my book for free. It gives you 4 downloads. It's not the audible version, so you will have to flick it and you'll have to check your spam. It may be in your spam, but I'll give you the audible book for free, 5.5 hours. And I listened to it as I was walking around New York, and I was quite impressed. In fact, the people who listened to it, it's no different to how I'm speaking to you now. Otherwise, the book does go on sale in Australia, August 28th, just in time for Father's Day. There is still enter HPF at the checkout, and you're still getting 25% off and free delivery. It's $32.99. You guys will get it for $20 as being part of HPF. If you want to buy the book, it's a good book. Pass it on, read it. I'm very happy with it. And again, a lot of the content inside was formed by conversations I've had with men in high performance father and real dad movement, and obviously the content that I've prepared for these talks. So I'm off to bed. I encourage you to do the same. See if you can get your 8 hours sleep. Until next time, I'll see you in July on the other side of the financial year. Good evening, gentlemen.